more than John Key, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
We are.
Okay. Mr. Scaramucci paid $100,000 to be in the movie Wall Street, and this is what he said in the film.
Churchill Schwartz has a huge position in this thing. I want to get short that stock.
Churchill Schwartz has a huge position in this thing.
He didn't say huge, he said huge.
Like Donald Trump
He
does.
didn't say his age.
Just like Donald Trump says
Exactly,
it.
so maybe that was the beginning.
That's funny because, just before he got fired, they were all saying that Trump would never fire him because he's like Trump. And Trump wants to be looked after and he wants loyalty. And who's going to look after the president?
Maybe he was a bit too much like Trump, and Trump was not exactly threatened that he was going to run for president.
It's going to take a very...
Too much competition.
It's going to take a very special person to succeed at that press secretary job, isn't it?
Why would a money trader worth as much as John Key sell up, that's if he really is, sell up and take a job as the White House's comms man?
Why did a man worth as much as John Key sell up and become our Prime Minister? I guess there's different things that drive them. Most of us, I guess, you have a certain sort of striving towards a financial comfort level, and if they've got there, they might think, well, let's have some fun. They might be thinking, let's do something that they believe is good.
Or it's partly the age of celebrity that people just want to be in the limelight.
Chris Liddell, New Zealand businessman, he's only paid, the figures came out a couple of weeks ago, he's paid, and I'm not quoting it properly because I can't remember, something like $25,000 for his advisory role in the Trump administration. They don't do it for the money.
Could it launch a political career down the line?
Not now, I don't think.
Well, not now, obviously, but was that why he chose to do that?
Goodness knows what's going to be launched.
Maybe they just believed they could be in control, because, you know.
Cash is king, take away cash, I will trade silver or gold. I am sick of being forced to pay to breathe. What was that last bit about?
Who pays him to, or her?
I don't know. It got a bit lyrical towards the end. Hello, panel. The whole point of going to Mars or other planets is to ensure the future of and enhance the chances of the survival of human civilization. That indeed is the principal argument advanced.
That's a fair point. That's an absolute fair point. I'm sceptical as to whether that is the answer.
The nation's top pie will be announced tonight.
This is something I'm an expert on.
Don't break the embargo. We know what the top pie is, but it's embargoed. What is your preferred pie? Please.
Well, my mum couldn't cook silver beet, but she could do a bacon egg pie like nobody else.
Oh, yeah, Mum does a really good bacon and egg pie. That's almost not a pie, though. I mean, it is a pie. What am I trying to say?
It's a pie, not a pie.
It's not the sort of pie, it's not like a chicken pie or a steak pie or something like that. I've never liked potato top pies. I think they're always too dry.
A bacon and egg pie isn't really an authentic pie in the sense like a mince pie or a steak pie, is it? Well, it is. It's got its own authenticity, but it's different.
But it's a different kind of pie.
Okay. Is a pasty a pie? I like pasties, Cornish pasties.
No, pasty's not a pie. It's a pasty.
But it's encased by pastry.
Bacon and egg pie you eat cold, I guess, so that's why it's not... You wouldn't really eat a cold mince pie, would you? It'd be quite disgusting.
Oh, some people don't mind cold pies.
I don't know. They get too fancy pants about pies these days. You go and, if you're filling up with petrol, you look at it and there are all these fancy flavours. Can't be doing with that.
What is the enduring allure of the pie? Because it's not a universal comestible.
Pastry is just delicious. Pastry is the best thing ever.
Okay. What's the ultimate superfood?
It's comfort
I
food.
think it's the opposite of the ultimate superfood, actually, but that's probably why it tastes so damn good.
Okay. So both of you prefer bacon and egg. That's your favourite. Is that right?
Oh, I like steak, cheese and bacon from Dominion Road.
Okay.
I like chicken pies. I like all pies. Actually, I like sausage rolls more.
You should be going to these awards today.
Apple pies.
Mike Rehu, Alan Reid have been on the panel. Thank you both.
Pleasure.
On this dramatic day in politics. Thanks, everybody. Back tomorrow. Checkpoint coming up with John Campbell.
Kia ora everyone, what a difference 24 hours makes. Last night we had Andrew Little on the program saying, I am staying on. Today we have Jacinda Ardern and Labour's first ever Māori Deputy Leader, Kelvin Davis, to tell us what difference they can make. Also tonight we'll talk to James Shaw about what Labour's new leadership will mean for the Greens. We talk to Jacinda Ardern's mum. We're in the region speaking to people from Whangarei to Dunedin about what they make of Labour's new leadership team. And we go to Washington where Anthony Scaramucci has been given his marching orders bizarrely soon. Plus Napier City Council hires security guards to monitor beggars and a big Court of Appeal judgment. All of that and more after the news.
RNZ News at 5. Kia orana, good evening. Ko Katrina Batanaho. Jacinda Ardern is the new leader of the Labour Party after a swift leadership change at Parliament today. Within a matter of hours, Andrew Little had stepped down and been replaced with his former deputy, Jacinda Ardern, the MP for Mount Albert. Our political editor, Jane Patterson, has more.
Andrew Little fell on his sword after 3 consecutive polls put the Labour Party at between 23 and 25%, just 8 weeks out from the election.
I've just confirmed to the Labour caucus that I will step aside as leader of the Labour Party. There's no question that the poll results that came out last week, an internal poll, the Colmar-Brunton poll, the Reid poll, were disturbing.
Mr Little said Labour has a tough fight ahead and took responsibility for Labour's level of public support.
It became pretty clear that the story around those polls was building a narrative day after day that meant we were not able to, have not been able to get our messages about the things that actually matter.
Just over an hour later, there was confirmation Jacinda Ardern had been elected leader and the MP for Te Tai Tokoro, Calvin Davis, her deputy, both unopposed. She addressed the media a short time later.
His announcement today and the situation we have found ourselves in is not what anyone expected or wanted. In my time working with Andrew, I know one thing to be true. He is first and foremost loyal to Labour.
Ms Ardern says she and her team will take the next 72 hours to reflect and take stock of the election campaign plan.
And additional announcements that I would like to add to our program. You will hear more from myself and the team on this in the future.
The Green Party's co-leader Matiria Ture says she's enjoyed working with Mr Little, but his departure won't weaken the two parties' alliance.
I've also worked with Jacinda Ardern over a number of years in Parliament. I hold her in very high regard. I'm very pleased that she has this new role as leader.
Jacinda Ardern says Labour has enough money to change all of its campaign billboards around the country, which currently picture her and Andrew Little. From Parliament, Jane Patterson.
An Auckland property developer has unveiled plans to build up to 500 social rental homes and blamed government policy for soaring house prices. Ted Manson says the first 2 projects by his charitable foundation will create more than 163 social homes. The apartments in the central city and Glen Eden in the west will be leased to the community housing provider Compass. Mr Manson told a housing summit in Auckland that tax breaks encouraging people to buy investment housing are keeping first home buyers and community providers out of the market. Uninsured property owners in Christchurch's red zone hope a landmark court ruling will mean the government finally pays them for their homes. In 2011, the government offered to buy properties from homeowners badly affected by the earthquakes, but only those which were insured. Today, the Court of Appeal found that decision was unlawful and discriminatory. A spokesperson for the residents, David Miller, says it's been a hard fight.
It was really very difficult for the people when they were left without any money. They couldn't move and they had to stay where they were, So, no, it's been a long, hard battle, something that I never want for them to go through again, or anybody in the country. We just cannot have this. This is not our country.
David Miller, the minister responsible for Christchurch's regeneration, Nikki Wagner, says she's seeking legal advice. The government will send unemployed people to help flood-hit Otago farmers and residents. The Minister for Primary Industries, Nathan Guy, announced a support package for farmers today after heavy rain flooded the region 10 days ago. He declared those floods a medium-scale adverse event. Mr Guy has activated Enhanced Task Force Green to clean up flood debris in both rural and urban areas. The task force uses job seekers, students and displaced workers.
They won't be able to handle a chainsaw, they may not know what a wire strainer is, but they will be able to get out and clean flood debris off fences. We'll also utilise those people in the cities to work with 200 odd properties that need to be cleared out of carpets, furniture, etc.
Nathan Guy. The police have confirmed a 10th death in Auckland which could be linked to synthetic drug use. They found the body of a 47-year-old man in a central Auckland hostel last Friday. The Associate Health Minister, Peter Dunn, met with Auckland Police and the Chief Coroner, Deborah Marshall, today, who Mr Dunn says confirmed the 10th death. He says they're all desperate to find out what's in the drug and tests are being carried out. Donald Trump's communications director, Anthony Scaramucci, has been formally escorted off the White House grounds after being fired just 10 days into his new role. Last week, he launched an abusive attack on a number of senior White House officials. His sacking came just hours after the appointment of former General John Kelly as the new White House Chief of Staff. It's 5:05. Sport, there'll be no major shake-up at the Highlanders following the appointment of former All Black Aaron Mauger as head coach. Mauger has signed a 3-year deal with the franchise, replacing Tony Brown, who's moving to Japan. Mauger says the Highlanders have a special environment and he wants to continue with what Brown and Jamie Joseph have done in recent years. Meanwhile, Super Rugby's governing body SANZAAR is defending its decision to appoint South African referee Jaco Peyper to control this weekend's final between the Lions and Crusaders in Johannesburg. Sports editor Stephen Hewson reports.
Jaco Peyper was in charge of last weekend's semi-final between the Lions and the Hurricanes and was criticised for his controversial sin-binning of Hurricanes' first 5, Beauden Barrett, at a crucial stage in the Lions' 39-29 comeback win. But SANZAAR boss Andy Marino says Peyper is the best referee around and his appointment is consistent with their policy of merit-based appointments. He points out too that last year New Zealand referee Glenn Jackson controlled the final in Wellington when the Hurricanes beat the Lions. This is Stephen Hewson.
Top New Zealand swimmer Lauren Boyle says she's finally had to admit a long-term hip injury has got the better of her. The 5-time World Championship medalist and former world record holder has announced her retirement, saying it was a tough decision.
For a long period of time I've been dealing with a hip injury. So for myself, I can only perform if I can meet my own personal standards, and I can't do that anymore, so it's time to make a change.
Lauren Boyle. That's the news.
A shock sacking.
Another record ensuring that Anthony Scaramucci will soon be an answer in the game Trivial Pursuit.
Ousted before he began the job.
From being named on a Friday afternoon and to be fired a week Monday after that, it's a pretty extraordinary turn of events.
The journalist who started it all.
It was probably the most unusual interview I've ever had with a government official in 20 years of covering Washington.
Unmissable. Morning Report with Guy and Espiner and Susie Ferguson, weekdays from 6. Then on 9 to noon, landlords are dragging their heels on insulating rental properties, even for tenants with serious medical conditions requiring it. And after 10, Rachel House, the New Zealand actor, director and writer, who's been on stage and screen for 25 years. Join me, Catherine Ryan, on 9 to noon after Morning Report on RNZ National.
Met Service weather through to midnight tomorrow, Northland, Auckland and Coromandel. The odd shower today, rain with heavy falls spreading from the north tomorrow afternoon and evening with possible thunderstorms about eastern Northland. Waikato and Bay of Plenty, a few showers, turning to scattered rain tomorrow. Waitomo to Manawatu, including the central high country, periods of rain with some heavy falls, slowly clearing from tomorrow afternoon. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, a few spots of rain becoming widespread tonight. Horowhenua, Kapiti, Wellington, Wairarapa, Nelson, Marlborough, Canterbury, Otago and Southland, cloudy periods, a few showers clearing inland Otago and Southland tonight. Bulla, Westland and Fiordland mainly fine, but the odd shower about Bulla, and for the Chatham Islands, rain this evening and showers tomorrow. It's 5:08 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Thank you very much indeed, Katrina Batten. Jacinda Ardern is promising to run the campaign of our lives after becoming Labor's youngest ever leader. Moving at uncharacteristically high speed, Labor completely changed its leadership team this morning following 3 disastrous political polls in very quick succession. So Andrew Little is out and the 37-year-old Mount Albert MP takes the reins of an embattled Labor Party just 7.5 weeks out from the general election. Our Deputy Political Editor Chris Bramwell was at Parliament as the hectic day unfolded.
Andrew Little arrived at Wellington Airport on an overcast morning, clearly still hoping to end the day as Labor Party leader.
Are you going to hand in a resignation? Are you going to offer your resignation?
No, I think those issues are for a separate discussion, and caucus will have a good discussion about it.
Cool, so you're not going to offer a vote of confidence or anything like that?
No, there's none that I'm aware of, and I'm certainly not putting one up.
And so what are you going to say about your leadership at the moment to people who are wondering about what's going on?
Yeah, these are matters for a caucus to have a talk about. You know, they clearly want to have that discussion.
But just 90 minutes later, the former union boss gathered the media to the second floor of Parliament House to deliver this message.
I've just confirmed to the Labor caucus that I will step aside as leader of the Labor Party. There's no question that the poll results that came out last week, an internal poll, the Colmar-Brunton poll, the Reid poll, were disturbing and very, very disappointing. In the end, as leader, you have to take responsibility, and I have and I do.
Andrew Little nominated his deputy Jacinda Ardern to replace him, and an hour later it was a done deal. Ms Ardern and her deputy Calvin Davis were elected unopposed. Mr Davis is Labour's first Māori deputy leader. Normally Labour leadership contests take weeks, but because this has happened in the run-up to election day, all it took was a majority vote of the party's caucus. As the new leadership team addressed the media, the first thing Jacinda Ardern did was pay tribute to her predecessor.
His announcement today and the situation we have found ourselves in is not what anyone expected or wanted. In my time working with Andrew, I know one thing to be true. He is first and foremost loyal to Labour.
Jacinda Ardern says she and her team will take the next 72 hours to reflect and take stock of the election campaign plan. The three-term MP who grew up in Murupara and Morrinsville insists she has what it takes to be the next Prime Minister.
I've had nigh on 20 years of experience working in and around politics, but I also bring with me a pretty diverse rural background. Granted, I am a young proposition for the party, but this team has worked alongside me for 9 years. They have faith in me, and I absolutely believe I'm up to the job.
In her first press conference as leader, Jacinda Ardern was confident, clear and personable. She was also witty, delivering several quick one-liners. She was asked whether Labour's relationship with other parties might change under her leadership, including what her message was to New Zealand First Leader Winston Peters.
I like single malts. Look, I mean, it's true. I guess the point I'm trying to make is that, we'll find our common ground. You won't hear a lot of conversation about that from us in the election campaign. We're going to be focused on Labour, and our clear message to voters is that if they want some assurance that National won't be in charge after the election, then the surest way to guarantee that is a vote with Labour.
Jacinda Ardern says there will be no change to the Memorandum of Understanding that Labour has with the Greens. On his way into Parliament, the Prime Minister Bill English told reporters that his party always respected the Leader of the Opposition.
This is someone who in a matter of months could be Prime Minister, and in the context of the current election campaign, we need to lift our levels of support to win an election with Jacinda Ardern as Leader of the Opposition.
Do you think she could be Prime Minister?
Well, under MMP, every election is tight. And, in current polling, we don't have enough levels of support to form the kind of government that we think New Zealand needs. So we've got a lot of hard work to do, whether it's, Andrew Little or Jacinda Ardern.
Minutes later in question time, Mr English and Ms Ardern faced off for the first time, with the new Labour leader trying to push the Prime Minister on housing.
Supplementary question, Jacinda Ardern.
Supplementary. If the government has responded as he claims, why for every family he expected to request an emergency housing grant did 20 turn up? Does that mean the homelessness problem is far bigger than he accepts?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, that's all old news. That all happened last winter when the grants were put in place, and it turned out there was strong demand for the grants.
Jacinda Ardern has a tough road ahead, with just 7.5 weeks until polling day. She needs to not only try to turn around her party's downward trend in the polls, but also get ready for the rough and tumble of an election campaign and prepare to debate the Prime Minister numerous times in live debates. The party machine also has a lot of work to do behind the scenes, but Labour says it does have enough money to change all its billboards, which currently picture Jacinda Ardern and Andrew Little. Atu i te whare pārimata mō te hōtaka o te ahiahi nei, ko Chris Bramalaho.
So the question is, what difference will new leaders make? Can they take policy positions that are fundamentally set to an electorate that has either not noticed them or not embraced them in numbers great enough to allow Andrew Little to remain? Can Jacinda Ardern make that kind of difference?
I'm absolutely confident, John, that actually the ideas that we're presenting really are about facing up to the issues that New Zealand currently is trying to tackle, making sure that we're a country where every person can expect to have a decent roof over their head, meaningful work and a world-class education system in a place where, kids thrive in creativity rather than poverty. I fundamentally believe that New Zealand can achieve those things if we've got a really progressive vision around that.
But
Part about
Andrew
it is
Little, fundamentally believed New Zealand could.
Yeah,
I mean,
he
Andrew
did.
Little absolutely wanted those things. So
And
what can you do to persuade people that Labor can deliver on that stuff?
Well, what I'm really clear on is nothing I'm saying is about diminishing the work that Andrew has done. But I will take a different approach to communicating that message. I'm relentlessly positive. It's just in my nature. And I think one of the issues when you're in opposition for 9 years, and it's natural, we see day to day the struggle that people are having in New Zealand. We know things can be better. And perhaps in highlighting that, people get drawn into the negative rather than the solutions that we have.
You said relentlessly positive, right? And you said that in your media stand-up at midday. What do you mean? And how do you hold the government to account, find faults rigorously and fairly, but also articulate an alternative? Because that balancing act, since Helen Clark stood down in November 2008, it has defied Phil Goff, it has defied David Shearer, it's defied David Cunliffe, and it's defied Andrew Little. How can you do it?
Well, this is how I would articulate it. When I listen to New Zealanders talk about their view of the country and where it is right now, the first thing they'll talk about are all of the things that are good about New Zealand. And I think that's because we are inherently, as a nation, pretty optimistic, but also pretty pragmatic. But what I also hear is this inherent sense that we can be better than this. So I guess my appeal to New Zealanders is that amongst that optimism that we have, we can, in fact, we have to be better than this. I can be relentlessly optimistic, but amongst that optimism is a real sense of duty to the people who aren't doing well in New Zealand, who themselves might be optimistic about their future, but for years have felt like they are going backwards because, their income might have gone up 2%, but their rents have gone up 5%. So they're optimistic, but they need someone to actually show them they have something to be hopeful about.
Are they optimistic?
That's what Labor do.
Right. Are they optimistic?
And
some are completely disconnected from the political process, right? More people didn't vote last time round than voted for Labor. 40% of 18 to 24-year-olds didn't vote. Roughly a quarter of Māori didn't vote. Roughly a third of unemployed people didn't vote. How do you persuade them to even notice what's going on in Parliament?
This is a big challenge for us, and I'm going to be unapologetic about doing everything I can to reach each and every one of those groups. Māori, Pacifica, young people, those people who have seen that actually the things they're worried about, we haven't spoken to them about that. And so it's obviously a massive undertaking for us. One group in particular I'm focused on, you've mentioned young people, young Māori and Pacifica are included within that. The equivalent of Hamilton did not vote last election, but had the right to and were enrolled to. Now that's huge. They have the potential to change electoral outcomes, and we will continue to be focused on, those 90,000 young people who deserve to have an opportunity and a stake in New Zealand who aren't in education or training. You will hear us talk relentlessly about the plans and opportunities we have for them, and we must. But I also fundamentally believe that New Zealanders want to feel proud about New Zealand again. And that's going to be about lifting everyone, but also looking about the role that we have to play in the international environment and tackling some of these big challenges that all countries are tackling.
Can I pick you up on pride? Can I pick you up?
Yeah.
What do you feel most proud of about New Zealand?
When I reflect on it, often it's been about the past. The fact that we looked beyond these ideas of simple personal responsibility and created safety nets for everyone, that we were world leading in social welfare programs and housing and getting public free education, getting those basic rights. But actually when I think about it, also our international reputation, I'm proud of nuclear free. I'm proud of the stance that we've continued to take. We're a small nation who can be big hitters. We should be doing that on the next challenge, which is climate change.
And what do you feel least proud of?
The fact that we're leaving people behind.
Have you heard from the government today? Anyone wished you well?
Oh, there are some nice traditions in politics. So Phil English came over and gave me a very firm long-lasting handshake before Parliament started today, and had a little look in his eye like, I know where you are right now.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And so that was a nice moment. But now, right, the bells are ringing and it is all on for young and old for the next 2 months.
I expect this to be an incredibly robust, energetic campaign, but one that is fought, I hope, at least respectfully, because I think that's what New Zealanders want from their politicians, and that's what they'll get from me.
Jacinda Ardern, so a long handshake from Bill English in Parliament this afternoon. But what does the Prime Minister make of this challenger for his job? How will National respond? Were they surprised or not by the events that unfolded so rapidly this morning? We would have loved to have asked Bill English those questions, but his office told us he wasn't available. In a moment, James Shaw from the Greens. Later, Kelvin Davis will join us after 6 o'clock. And we will hear lots and lots from people around New Zealand about what they make. Will it make a difference to their voting intentions? Jacinda Ardern's father, Ross, is the New Zealand High Commissioner to Niue. A short time ago, we called Niue and spoke to her mum, Laurel.
Yes, yes, I am.
Is this the mother of the leader of the Labour Party?
Yes, it is.
And
yes.
You must be feeling very proud.
I am. It's I can't quite believe it's happened. I'm still coming to terms with it because she's just gone from the deputy and just won the by-election at Mount Albert, and now this has happened. It's gone quite fast, hasn't it?
It's gone very fast. Although,
but
although people have been talking about it for a while now, saying, "Gosh, this young person's a talent."
She's a very, very clever lady, yes, and she's how would I put it? She's pretty special.
A very proud mum. Our reporters around the country have been asking people what they think of the events of today. Let's begin in Whangarei, where voters told our reporter Lois Williams they're delighted Kelvin Davis, who is from the north, of course, is Labour's first Māori deputy leader.
Kelvin is a whanaunga of mine. He's representative for Te Tai Tokerau. Of course, I'm delighted that he's in that position and, as always, there to support my whanaunga.
My biggest congratulations to Kelvin. I think he will do a wonderful job as the deputy leader for Labour. As a representative for Northland, Kelvin's always been a man of us, a man of his people from Ngāpuhi and Ngāti Manu, and I can't think of a better person from Northland to be a deputy leader for Labour.
I think it's fantastic news. I think Kelvin Davis is the man, and I think together with Jacinda they make a good combination, and it really is a fresh approach, which I see is on the billboards around the roads of the north. So this is a fresh approach.
Do you think it'll work?
I think it couldn't have got any worse, so I think it will get better.
In New Plymouth, our reporter Robin Martin broke the news of Andrew Little's resignation to Tonya.
Oh, I didn't even realise that he had stood down. Yeah, I knew it might have been in the offing, but I don't really follow politics, so I haven't really got much thought about it.
So Jacinda Ardern has been voted in unanimously as the new leader of the Labour Party. How do you think she'll go? What do you think?
I think she'll go well, yeah, sort of like a new face, like young blood coming through. And I think Labour most probably needs more dynamic leader, and I think it would only do well for the Labour Party.
Brent said he thought Andrew Little standing down was good for the party.
I think it's good for the party. I think just they needed a younger, and I think, well, she's better looking. No, nothing against Andrew, but I think they needed a bit of a fresh look, and because, let's face it, they weren't getting anywhere in the polls, so yep, I think it might make a difference.
Glenn said Mr Little made the right call, but at the wrong time.
Probably not the right time for Labour, but I don't think he was really the right man for the job.
And Jacinda Ardern, how do you think she'll go?
She seems to be popular, but I'm not sure that she's really prepared for the job. She's always said she never wanted it, so all of a sudden she's thrown into it. So I don't think she'll do so well.
Voters on the streets of Dunedin told our reporter Lydia Anderson they agree.
Well, look, this close to the election, my view is that it's a sign of weakness and a last-ditch, desperate attempt to gather some votes. Jacinda's obviously very popular, but in my view, it's too late to pull it back for Labour now.
Well, I think there needs a bit of new blood in there, so
We'll see how it goes.
I mean, I'm not really surprised given the low ratings. I think it's a real shame that it's happened, and it really weakens the whole position for getting against National.
What's your opinion on Jacinda as a leader?
I don't really know much about her, I have to say, honestly.
In Palmerston North, voters believe Jacinda Ardern would work hard to bring a different but positive approach to Labour's politics.
I think she will work really hard to bring them up in the polls, and I think she'll bring a different approach and some probably new ideas. But yeah, it's a pretty short time frame, so wait and see, I think.
She's an awesome person and she'll be great for New Zealand politics, and I think from my perspective as someone who wants to change the government in September, I think it's probably good for both Labour and the Greens that we've got a fresh face and someone with a lot of energy and a good sort of positive outlook on life.
I should bring a women's perspective, I hope, and that's really great. We'll see more of that at any time and every time. And then I think more energy because she's younger. As an older person myself.
I kind of just thought good luck to her. She's probably jumping on a bit of a grenade, so yeah, it'd be a tricky one, but at least she's probably different from the status quo, less like Bill English and the incumbents that have been in the role for a long time. So never know, might make a difference.
Vox Pops put together by Bridget Burke. What does the Green Party, who have risen in the polls recently as Labor have fallen, make of Labor's new leader? I asked Greens co-leader James Shaw.
Sort of personally, sad for Andrew Little because he's a thoroughly decent man, a really high integrity person, and I've enjoyed working with him. But he did do the right thing, and I am delighted for Jacinda and for Kelvin. I think.
Why?
Look, I think Jacinda turns this election into a real competition, right? There's a real fight on now. I think she's got the skills, she's got the leadership capability, she's got the connection with the public, and this is a very different kettle of fish to how it was last week.
So you really do feel this is going to make Labor's chances and therefore the Greens' chances materially better?
I think that today's announcement definitely improves the chances that we'll be able to change the government and form a new government together after the election.
You really believe that? You're not just saying it?
I honestly believe that.
So you're talking about the MMP Cuisinirod scenario, right? That you are talking about a coalition of the left, for want of a better term.
Yeah.
But doesn't that also mean that Labor may take votes from the Greens, the kind of votes that you've had in the past few weeks since you've started getting some publicity?
Well, nobody takes votes from each other, right? Votes are earned. I honestly believe that. The Greens are now, what are we polling? About 15%, which is kind of where we need to be. Labor need to lift their game, in order for us to change the government. I mean, I did take some heart from the poll on Sunday that showed that our combined vote was actually up. While Labor's was down, the combined vote was up, and that shows that the trend is in our direction.
The combined vote goes back and forth, though, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
And so if Labor improve off the back of this leadership change, there is a probability that at least some of those votes will come from you guys. But you are pragmatic about that, philosophical about that. That's just MMP.
It's democracy, right? And I am going to do everything that I can to make sure that the Greens poll as high as we can. We're going to focus on our campaign and our priorities. And I think at the moment, people are looking at us and going, hey, you guys are really bringing something to this. But it's incumbent upon us and upon the Labor Party, both, to convince people who have been voting for the government over the last few years to switch, right? There's no point us just swapping votes between us. We've both got to grow the vote.
The elephant in the room, although who knows whether he's in the room or not, is Winston Peters, right? I mean, we don't even know where that elephant is. But you are not looking at a scenario that excludes or precludes the requirement to have him in your coalition, are you?
No, I mean, when we signed the Memorandum of Understanding last May, not last May, the year before, we said, look, the Green Party and the Labor Party are committed to changing the government. If other parties, including New Zealand First, say that they want to change the government and want to join us in that effort, then we welcome them.
So you still need New Zealand First, don't you?
On today's polling, yes.
So you are not thinking Jacinda Ardern is going to make such a difference that you don't need New Zealand First. That would require Labor to get up into the mid-30s.
Nothing's impossible. She is quite a politician. I mean, she is a very unusual character in the New Zealand political landscape, and I wouldn't put it past her. I really wouldn't. You saw that performance on TV just before when she did her stand-up.
The midday stand-up. Yep.
Yeah, she was outstanding, and I looked at that and I thought there is a future Prime Minister, and she's got charm. She's warm. She's funny. She's incredibly intelligent. Her values are rock solid. I think that you're looking at someone there who is going to change the fortunes of the Labor Party, lift that vote, and change the government. I really do.
Greens co-leader James Shaw. Let's go back to our Vox Pops. This time on the streets of Wellington, wireless journalist Max Toll went to talk to people in the capital.
I got up the hill this morning and just scrolling through Facebook before going into election, just saw that he'd stepped down and I was like, oh my God, it's quite close to elections to be doing that, so I was quite shocked.
Yeah, it's a mess, and I think voters hopefully will realise that we need a strong, stable government. I'm not saying I'm voting for National, but yeah, it's not a good look. But what is it, 7 weeks out of an election?
I mean, Labour hasn't been polling well, so, and I don't think switching leaders, even though Jacinda seems more popular, I don't think that's necessarily going to help to just switch leaders quite quickly.
I was actually just more surprised that he stepped down, just so close to an election year.
Yeah, I've seen the news today. I think it's quite a good idea. I think Andrew didn't have the backing of the caucus and probably the New Zealand public. I think Jacinda's young, energetic, Auckland. I think she can get the voters rallied before the election.
Yeah, my mum just texted me and said she's the PM as well. Oh, not the PM. Why do I keep saying that? I'm dreaming, yeah, that she's the opposition leader now, so it's pretty cool, pretty exciting.
And I went to one of her talks when she went to Wanganui and she seems good. I like that might be a woman in there, so we'll see what happens.
What's my perception of the Labour Party? I haven't followed, gone right into it, but I reckon the way that they're going, I quite like their ideas of what they want to do for the people that are working for the minimum wage and all that shit. So,
I mean, they're as bad as everyone else, really.
And politics in general?
Yeah, it's you vote for the lesser of two evils.
Yeah, I think a lot of people look up to her for different reasons, and I think as well, the Māori culture specifically might have a couple issues with Bill English at the moment. Especially didn't like his view from Waitangi, which was quite interesting. So, yeah, anyone but him would be good.
More on the big events of the day after 6, but coming up before then, you're fired. The mooch gets his marching orders. The Court of Appeal delivers a damning interim judgment in favour of the Christchurch property owners known as the Quake Outcasts. The Napier City Council hires security guards to monitor beggars. Nona has business, but before all of it, Katrina Batten with headlines.
Labour's new leader says she and her team will take the next 72 hours to reflect and take stock of the party's election campaign plan. Jacinda Ardern says her focus over the next 7.5 weeks will be to get the party's messages through to voters, but admits it's not a lot of time to cut through and lift support. Jacinda's mother told John Campbell her daughter's meteoric rise to the leadership has taken her by surprise. The Green Party's co-leader James Shaw told Checkpoint Jacinda Ardern's elevation to Labour Party leader is an election game changer. An Auckland property developer building social rental homes is blaming government policy for soaring house prices. Ted Manson has told a housing summit that tax breaks encouraging people to buy investment housing are keeping first home buyers and community providers out of the market. Uninsured property owners in Christchurch's red zone hope a landmark court ruling will mean the government might finally pay them for their quake-damaged homes. In 2011, the government offered to buy badly hit properties from homeowners, but only those which were insured. Today, the Court of Appeal found that decision was unlawful and discriminatory. The police have confirmed a 10th death in Auckland relating to synthetic drug use. They found the body of a 47-year-old man in a central Auckland hostel last Friday. The Associate Health Minister, Peter Dunn, met with Auckland Police and the Chief Coroner today, who Mr Dunn says confirmed the 10th death. He says they're all desperate to find out what is actually in the drug and tests are being carried out. Unemployed people will be sent to help people in flood-hit Otago. The Minister for Primary Industries, Nathan Guy, has announced a support package for farmers today, including rural assistance payments and tax relief. Task Force green workers will also clean up flood debris in both rural and urban areas. Donald Trump's communications director, Anthony Scaramucci, has been formally escorted off the White House grounds after being fired just 10 days into his new role. Those are the headlines. I'm back at 6.
We'll have more on that coming up, but let's turn to business news now with Nona Peltier, who is beside me. Auckland Airport expects to spend how much over the next...
$3.7 billion over the next 10 years.
To upgrade the airport's aeronautical infrastructure.
That's right. So $1.9 billion in the next 5 years. And for that, they've signaled how much that's going to cost everybody. And it's going to be passed on to airlines who in turn pass it on to passengers. However, Auckland Airport says that it's justified. They need to spend the money. $1.9 million is going to give us quite a lot of things in the first 5 years. And then in the second 5 years, another $1.8 billion. That's going to give us a second runway. And the Auckland Airport says they need that because we have an awful lot of visitors coming here. And that is for sure the way that our statistics is backing that up. So it's going to add a little bit of cost to domestic passenger fares, about 1%, 0.8% actually. And on average, 1.7% over the next 5 years to international fares will be reduced. So it kind of overall, it's kind of a flat
Right,
increase.
so a slight increase in domestic and a slight reduction in international.
Yeah, and that's partly because we're going to have a new domestic terminal in Auckland that will be connected to the international airport. So for people who, come through Auckland Airport when it's a rainy day, you have to, go over to the international airport. You have about a 1,000 meter walk.
Yeah.
It's unpleasant in the rain, isn't it? So, no, you won't have to do that.
Right.
Yeah, okay, anyway. So overall, that didn't have a lot of impact in the market. So Auckland Airport was down just a little teeny bit, 1.5 cents to $6.94.5. And overall, the index rose 0.5%.
Gosh, that's a tiny move, isn't it?
Yeah,
on the
hardly
basis-
at all.
Right, okay, yeah.
But that's also because they signaled this for a while,
Okay.
so it wasn't really a big surprise. The NZX Top 50 Index rose nearly 0.5%, 35 points to 7,729, and our dollar is holding steady, and that's partly because of the turmoil in the United States. Yeah, no one really likes what's going on over there, so that's held the value of the US dollar down, so we're trading at 75.1 US cents, 93.5 Australian, 56.8 British pence, and I'm sure we're going to hear all about the mooch.
We are going to cover the
That's
turmoil in
right.
the United States right now. Beautiful segue, Nona Peltier. Thank you so much. Yes, Anthony Scaramucci, a.k.a. the Mooch, has set a new record, becoming the shortest-serving communications director in White House history. The tough-talking New Yorker was appointed to the role by President Donald Trump 10 days ago, but he actually only held the position for 6 days, thanks to an official start date of July 25th. He was fired by Mr. Trump's new Chief of Staff, General John Kelly, just hours after Kelly was sworn in. With all the developments, here's the BBC's John Sopel.
So I'm going to be very brief. I'm going to make my remarks informal and then I'll...
Well, he was right about that, wasn't he? It's day one on the job, and certain things are instantly clear. Anthony Scaramucci doesn't lack for self-confidence, swagger or bravado.
But I love the president, and I'm very, very loyal to the president.
This would be his first and last appearance at the White House podium. 10 days later, the new communications director is gone, the White House blowing him a kiss goodbye. But let it not be said, it was an uneventful 10 days. He told the BBC he'd be straight talking.
One of the things I cannot stand about this town is the backstabbing that goes on here, okay? Where I grew up, in the neighborhood I'm from, we're front stabbers. We'd like to tell you exactly where we're from and what we're doing.
Turbulent doesn't begin to describe it. In a foul-mouthed tirade, he went to war with the two most senior people in the West Wing who aren't the president. In his conversation with the New Yorker magazine, Mr. Scaramucci said of the ex-chief of staff, Reince is a paranoid schizophrenic, a paranoiac. And of Steve Bannon, I'm not trying to build my own brand off the strength of the president. I'm here to serve the country. By last Friday, the chief of staff had been fired, left abandoned at Andrews Air Force Base. A scalp to Scaramucci. But now, irony of ironies, General John Kelly, on day one as new Chief of Staff, had changes he wanted to make as the President lavished praise on him.
So I want to congratulate you on having done a fantastic job, General, and we look forward to, if it's possible, an even better job as Chief of Staff.
That's right, sir. The General had demanded the head of Scaramucci, and the President served it up on a platter. After a dizzying few days, the President's press secretary tried to sound calm.
The President certainly felt that Anthony's comments were inappropriate for a person in that position. and he didn't want to burden General Kelly also with that line of succession.
Before all this unfolded, the president tweeted, highest stock market ever, best economic numbers in years, unemployment lowest in 17 years, wages rising, border secure, Supreme Court, no White House chaos. Well, actually, still quite chaotic, as the president went to a ceremony in the East Wing to honour those who were prepared to lay down their lives for their comrades and their country.
The BBC's John Sopel. Home again. The Court of Appeal has today delivered a damning interim judgment in the protracted legal battle between a group of Canterbury landowners known as the Quake Outcasts and former Earthquake Recovery Minister Jerry Brownlee. In short, the appeal court has ruled, and I quote, that the minister's decision to approve the recovery plan, under which nothing was offered for uninsured improvements, was unlawful. End quote. If you followed the case, you'll know what that means. If you haven't, it was originally a group of 45 uninsured property owners in Canterbury who were effectively excluded from the full weight of the government's red zone compensation package. Complicating the issue was that people who owned vacant sections couldn't have insurance. You can't insure bare land. Jerry Brownlee once again declined our invitation to appear on Checkpoint, but Grant Cameron says it's another court victory. He's their lawyer, and this one must compel the government to do a deal with the outcasts.
It's actually an interim judgment, but it has allowed their appeal from a decision of the High Court in Christchurch. Basically, it said that the minister had acted unfairly and unreasonably.
Unlawfully.
And, yeah,
is the word that is used.
Unlawful.
Yes.
That's it, right.
Okay, in what respect, Grant, sorry to interrupt, in what way were the minister's actions unlawful?
Well, in the particular regard, the court has declared that the minister's decision, which approved a recovery plan, under which nothing was offered for the uninsured improvements owned by these landowners, that was unlawful in itself. But I think when you read the judgment, it also makes it clear that the Crown arguments that were presented to the High Court as justifying the minister's decision were all found to be either unfair or unreasonable or also unlawful.
So we're talking about former Earthquake Recovery Minister here, Jerry Brownlee, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. What happens now?
Well, basically, I think the Crown needs to go away and have a serious thought. I mean, this group has effectively won in the whole High Court, Court of Appeal, Supreme Court. It had a knockback in the High Court, but now the Court of Appeal has said no. The Supreme Court judgment was clear. You have to go ahead in accordance with the principles outlaid there. So they've restated the principles. However, it's an interim judgment, and there's now the opportunity for the parties to go away and then come back to the court with their thoughts as to the appropriate remedy. And I think this is the time where the Crown needs to go away and seriously think about what it needs to do to provide justice to these people.
And there has been no determination from the Crown whatsoever to do that so far, has there? That's why
well, there's been a great unwillingness. I think Nikki Wagner is the new minister in charge of these issues. She's a pretty reasonable person, and I think by the time she comes to grips with these issues, she may see things in a different light. And
how many people are we talking about?
Actually, there's about 30 still affected by this.
Why has this dragged on so long and been fought through so many courts? Why has the Crown been so reluctant to settle what is, in fact, in monetary terms, a small settlement? Is there a precedent here that the Crown is worried about?
Well, if it was worried about a precedent, it has probably done entirely the wrong thing, because what we have now obtained from the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeal is even greater clarity about the limitations on ministers and their decision-making going forward. Had they not brought these proceedings, they may have had a position which was somewhat more open and flexible in that regard. So I think there's been a degree of almost defiance, that's certainly how the group would see it, that the minister wanted to be seen to be strong in his decision-making, and there was apparently no value to be seen in stepping back from decisions already made.
That was Grant Cameron talking to us earlier. One of Auckland's leading property developers has called for an end to tax breaks on investment housing as he detailed the biggest single philanthropic plan to build social housing. Ted Manson has started construction of what he hopes will become 500 social rental homes in Auckland over the next 7 years. Mr Manson's unveiled the ambition of his charitable foundation at a housing summit in Auckland. Our Auckland correspondent, Todd Nile, was there.
Ted Manson's wealthy now, but says his social housing views have been shaped by his State House family upbringing.
My parents lived in a very small one-bedroom apartment before the State House, which moved to when I was 5. So I'm doing this purely for philanthropic reasons because I've done very well in my life and been quite successful and realise that life's not fair for everyone.
This is an unparalleled charitable venture with 2 projects already being built that will provide 163 social rental homes in apartment blocks in the central city and in the West Auckland suburb of Gleneden. The Ted Manson Foundation will lease the apartments to community housing provider Compass for state-funded rental. Mr Manson says the combination of funding and his ability to build and maintain the apartments makes the venture unique.
We're building very robust property out of concrete and robust joinery, so they last for 60 years, not cheap, nothing cheap. It's just about impossible for any normal person to do this unless they've got a lot of money and they have their own construction company.
Nearly 100 other apartments in the 2 blocks will be sold to mainly owner-occupiers. His family firm, Manson's TCLM, are behind prominent commercial buildings such as the new Spark headquarters.
It's been a new challenge for me to understand how the social system works in New Zealand, understand how community housing providers work and how the government helps out with that, and I'm really enjoying the challenge and as I say, we're under construction with these 2 developments now, and I'm very pleased with what we've done so far.
In front of more than 100 prominent figures in development and social housing, Ted Manson blamed government and Reserve Bank policies for Auckland's soaring prices. He said tax breaks for investors were keeping first home buyers and community housing providers out of the market.
Property investors who buy residential property to hold and rent are and will potentially in the future be the main reason for double-digit increases in property values.
Ted Manson's speech was presented as an example of the action needed to accelerate the building of homes, especially affordable ones, in Auckland. The conference organiser, strategist Leonie Freeman, failed late last year to get government or Auckland mayoral support for an initiative to both plan and deliver the housing needs of Auckland. Ms Freeman hopes the conference and a subsequent report will encourage wider involvement in new ways to tackle a housing shortage which is worsening.
What we're trying to do here is be innovative in this approach. So yes, I'm well aware that there's people that are blockers, that trying to confuse the issue or trying to stop us. But I say to those people, choose what your role is. Lead, follow or get out of the way.
Leonie Freeman says the next step will be a report outlining ideas canvassed at the one-day summit. Ted Manson says his foundation's first 2 social housing projects will be finished in 2 years. I tamaki makoro mo te hōtaka o te ata, ko Todd Nile tēnei.
Meanwhile, community workers in South Auckland say there are more and more people sleeping rough. In the past month, 2 homeless men have died in Auckland. And at a meeting in Manurewa last night, organised by Green MP Marama Davidson, there were calls for more to be done to tackle the issue. Our social issues reporter, Sarah Robson, was there.
For the past 4 years, Debbie Munro and her team have been feeding and clothing the homeless and needy around Manurewa. Ms Munro says when they started, they were feeding 4 people. Now it's up to 35 people 3 times a week. But she says that's just the tip of the iceberg in the Manurewa area.
We're not hitting the families that are living at Weymouth Beach. We're not hitting the families that are probably sleeping in one of your parks around this area, which really bugs me. Because as far as I'm concerned, no one in New Zealand should be sleeping in cars, especially with our tamariki.
Debbie Munro says she's been shocked by some of the problems they've found over the past year. She says she came across a woman on the street who had boils on her leg that was so bad she couldn't stand.
I went up and said, "Why haven't you been to a doctor?" Do you know what her response was? Doctor told me to go away because I couldn't afford the money. I went, oh my God, what is the doctor's name? She wouldn't tell me. She's probably very lucky she didn't tell me, because I would have gone in there and had a titty fit, what I like to call it. We rushed her up to hospital. Blood poisoning up past her leg. If we hadn't have done it that night, she would have lost a leg.
Debbie Munro says people who are homeless don't have money to buy anything, let alone see a doctor. But she says there are other indignities.
Right up until last week, they didn't even have anywhere to go to the toilet. They had to pee and poo, and excuse that, but they had to pee and poo around the shops, in a bush, because the toilets would not be open for them. Only recently have our toilets been opened. How bad is that? Think about it, not being able to go and sit on the toilet.
Debbie Munro wants there to be an all-night cafe in the area where homeless people can get something to eat, sit down, watch television and come and go as they please. She says the government's plan to provide people with emergency housing by putting them up in motels isn't working.
They're coming back into the street because our guys do not want to live in cockroached, rat climbing, paru motels. It's cleaner in the street. And their family is in the street and they've got the support in the street.
Robert Mariner lived on the streets of West Auckland for years, but in May he got a house of his own. He says it's been hard adjusting to living under a roof by himself, and sometimes he does miss his life on the streets. But he says the homeless problem is getting worse, as are the problems with synthetic drugs.
It's really getting worse and worse, and like I said tonight here, you know, you've got all of these people and you've got all of these politicians and you've got all these drug and alcohol counsellors, you've got all of these things, but until somebody can run a synthetic counselling program, unless somebody can run something that deals with synthetics, the thing is it's not going to go away.
Robert Mariner says people can start helping the homeless by treating them with respect. Mō te hōtaka o te ahi, ko Sarah Robson, aho.
Let's go to Napier, where the City Council is hiring security guards to patrol its city centre in a bid to curb behaviour by a group of people who are begging, threatening people and openly taking drugs. At the Council's request, the police have dropped charges against 3 people who were begging. They were charged with a bylaw that forbids asking for money without permission. The Council says it never intended for the bylaw to be used against beggars, but it will review its stance if the security patrols don't work. Now, neighbouring Hastings is tackling its social problems with a very different approach. So our reporter Anusha Bradley has looked at, well, a tale of 2 cities.
Hastings, about 20 kilometres inland from Napier, is a smaller working-class city where deprivation and unemployment is high and incomes are low. But the city has been working hard to change this, and it's finding success. Patrols of purple-wearing city ambassadors has helped reduce crime over the past 4 years. But local retailers say a more recent scheme, feeding people for free, has made the biggest impact. Nourished for Nil takes unwanted food from supermarket stores and cafes and gives it to anyone who wants it. Founder Christina Macbeth says they're feeding up to 150 people a day, 5 days a week, and most come because they're hungry.
We have a lot of, of the hungry. We have a lot of working poor. We have a few homeless who come through as well. And then we have middle class, people who are passionate about food waste themselves, who see this food that we're getting and thinking, well, it's there for the taking, why not come along?
A co-owner of Cornucopia Organics in Hastings, Kay Keats, says shoplifting in her store has fallen significantly since the scheme started 6 months ago, and other retailers are finding the same.
We have heard from other people that, they've said that there's less shoplifting because people have got full tummies, which is an interesting one. Not so keen to shoplift when they're not hungry.
The manager of Hastings City Business Association, Susan McDade, says local businesses are benefiting from donating unwanted food, but she credits the council-funded patrols of City Assist ambassadors for creating massive social change.
These people are amazing. They're not just ambassadors for our town and giving directions and helping out, but they're passive security. And most importantly, there's someone to talk to for people who are in need, and they can refer them on to other agents.
The patrols are the brainchild of acting Hastings Mayor Sandra Hazelhurst, who says they've helped to turn around the lives of disengaged youth.
We had a number of disengaged young people in town without a purpose or direction, and our council realised that we needed to address this. So we set up a social development team connecting those young people to a program or training or employment, and that has led from the City Assist program.
Napier City Council says it's aware of Hastings' success, but the roots of the antisocial behaviour in its town are complex and need different strategies. A spokesperson says professional security guards patrolling the town centre are what is needed right now, though this will be reviewed every couple of weeks. Nourish Fennell hopes to extend its services to Napier, but says the biggest barrier to doing so is finding people willing to volunteer their time to help. For Checkpoint, Anusha Bradley.
Coming up to 5 minutes to 6, teams of unemployed people will be helping clean up flooded dairy farms in Otago after the government declared a medium-scale natural disaster. As our Otago Southland reporter Ian Telfer reports, 10 days on, some farms are still underwater.
The Tairi Plain's draining, but not fast enough. So the Primary Industries Minister, Nathan Guy, was back in Dunedin for the second time since the floods, this time to declare it an official disaster.
Today I'm declaring that this meets the criteria for a medium-scale adverse event. What that means now is we are going to trigger some extra support. I know that a lot of farmers aren't interested in a handout. They actually want to know that Wellington cares, and that's why I'm here today to show support from central government.
Mr Guy stood in a flooded field for photos before heading to the milking shed to tell a group of 30 Tairi farmers and industry representatives they would get the support they need. The government's giving the Otago Rural Support Trust extra funding, making rural assistance payments and giving some flexibility for paying tax. And Mr Guy told the farmers unemployed people would soon be out helping on their farms.
They won't be able to handle a chainsaw, they may not know what a wire strainer is, but they will be able to get out and clean flood debris off fences. We'll also utilise those people in the cities to work with 200 odd properties that need to be cleared out of carpets, furniture, etc.
A dairy farmer from nearby Momona, Matt Luke, says his farm's still a third underwater and he needs the help.
It's amazing how much this is going to affect us, especially the timing of it coming into calving. Animal health is a major issue with the state of the ground. If we can keep cows dry and warm is a big part of it with animal health. So when there's so much water around, it's harder to feed stock, to look after them as we need to when they're calving.
Richard Kite from RNZ says the biggest challenge will be getting enough food for the animals.
A lot of feed pressure for these farms that have been underwater. They've lost silage, and trying not to damage pasture. We're obviously here today and we're looking at absolutely waterlogged pasture, and every decision you make putting cows into a paddock is going to create damage, so that's a real struggle because that's feed for the rest of the year.
There was also plenty of talk today of farmer welfare, their mental health, the long days and mounting stress. Another farmer, Colin Skerr, says it can be hard to keep positive.
The pressure's only coming on. I think they've done pretty well so far, but with right into calving, it's a busy time as it is, and with the stress on top, we've just got to make sure they do see the way through, and it's often the people that don't come along to meetings like this, they're the ones we've got to keep an eye on.
Mr Skerr's organising a barbecue with the local Lions Club on Friday night at the West Tairi Rugby Club to give people a break for a couple of hours. He says the farmers will need regular gatherings to get through the flood. On the Tairi Plain for Checkpoint, Ian Telfer, Tēnei.
We now know which cities will host the next 3 Olympic Games. It will go Tokyo in 2020, Paris in 2024 and Los Angeles in 2028. With more, here's the BBC's Greg Dawson.
Paris campaigned hard for the 2024 Games, but this success has been helped by the number of cities that dropped out. One by one, Rome, Budapest and Hamburg all withdrew, fearful of costs and a lack of public support. That left just one major rival.
Follow the sun to a city poised on the edge of tomorrow.
Pitching to host the Olympics for a third time, LA wanted to bring the Summer Games back to the US for the first time since 1996. With most of its infrastructure already built, it boasted it could host the Games tomorrow, but now they've confirmed they're willing to wait.
In 2028, we're bringing the Games back to LA.
one of the great capitals of this Olympic movement, a city that has always been a games changer and will be again in 2028.
In exchange for its patience, LA will get a financial sweetener from the International Olympic Committee, extra funding for an extended planning period.
We can build that legacy right now instead of waiting till the Olympics are over. Simply put, what we were able to negotiate, this deal was too good to pass up.
This may be an unusual way for host cities to be confirmed. The IOC is expected to rubber stamp the announcement in a few weeks. But Paris won't care how it's done. After several failed bids, this decision guarantees the Games will return to the city exactly a century since they were last held there.
See you in Paris 2024.
And from the BBC, after 6, will Labour's leadership change work?
RNZ News at 6. Kia orana, good evening. Ko Katrina Batanaho. The new Labour leader, Jacinda Ardern, says she'll take a different approach to communicating Labour's message with just over 7 weeks till the election. At 37, Ms Ardern became the party's youngest ever leader after Andrew Little stood down today after 3 disastrous poll results for the party. Ms Ardern says she's relentlessly positive and wants to give New Zealanders hope. She says there are groups Labour clearly needs to better connect with.
I'm going to be unapologetic about doing everything I can to reach each and every one of those groups. Māori, Pacifica, young people, those people who have seen that actually the things they're worried about, we haven't spoken to them about that. And so it's obviously a massive undertaking for us.
Jacinda Ardern says focusing on the 90,000 young people who didn't vote in the last election is key to changing electoral outcomes. The Green Party believes Jacinda Ardern's elevation to Labour's leader is an election game changer. The Greens co-leader James Shaw told Checkpoint it gives Labour and the Greens a real chance of forming a ruling coalition.
I think she's got the skills, she's got the leadership capability, she's got the connection with the public. You know, this is a very different kettle of fish to how it was last week. I think that today's announcement definitely improves the chances that we'll be able to change the government and form a new government together after the election.
James Shaw says Jacinda Ardern has all the qualities needed to change Labour's fortune and become the next Prime Minister. Meanwhile, Ms Ardern's mother says she has been taken by surprise by her daughter's meteoric rise to the leadership. Ms Ardern's parents, Ross and Laurel, live in Niue, where Mr Ardern is New Zealand's High Commissioner. Laurel Ardern said today's news is taking some getting used to.
I'm still coming to terms with it because, she's just gone from the deputy and just won the by-election at Mount Albert, and now this has happened. It's gone quite fast.
Laurel Ardern says her daughter is very clever and very special. Uninsured property owners in Christchurch's red zone say a landmark court ruling could mean the government might finally pay them for their homes. In 2011, the government offered to buy properties from homeowners badly affected by the earthquakes, but only those which were insured. However, today, the Court of Appeal found that decision was unlawful and discriminatory. A spokesperson for the residents, David Miller, says it's been a hard fight. He hopes the homeowners can now be paid out in full as soon as possible and move on with their lives. The minister responsible for Christchurch's regeneration, Nikki Wagner, says she's seeking legal advice. A Tairi Plain farmer says stress is starting to build among the flood-hit Otago community. The Minister for Primary Industries, Nathan Guy, announced a support package for farmers today after heavy rain flooded parts of the region 10 days ago. The government will give the Otago Rural Support Trust extra funding, allowing rural assistance payments and some flexibility for paying tax and funding a central coordinator for the recovery. Farmer Colin Skerr says people are feeling the stress.
The pressure's only coming on. I think they've done pretty well so far, but with right into calving, it's a busy time as it is, and with the stress on top, we've just got to make sure they do see the way through. And it's often the people that don't come along to meetings like this that the ones we've got to keep an eye on.
Tairi farmer Colin Skerr. The police say there's been a 10th death in Auckland, which could be related to synthetic drug use. They found the body of a 47-year-old man in a central Auckland hostel on Friday. The Associate Health Minister, Peter Dunn, met with Auckland Police and the Chief Coroner, Deborah Marshall, today, who confirmed the 10th death. Mr Dunn says while the police have previously been slow to inform the government about synthetic drugs, they've agreed to share any new information as soon as they get it.
We're all in the same boat in a way. We're all desperate to find out the combination of substances involved. Samples have been sent from the people who've died so far to the relevant authorities for testing, and we're all awaiting the results of those tests.
Peter Dunn. Meanwhile, the number of ambulance call-outs in Auckland related to synthetic drug use has been decreasing in the past week. The Washington Post is reporting the US president personally dictated a misleading statement issued in the name of his eldest son. Donald Trump Jr. had been asked to confirm he met a Russian lawyer in Trump Tower to discuss how she could help his father's election campaign. Our Washington correspondent Priscilla Huff reports.
The newspaper has documented how U.S. President Donald Trump rejected advice to be transparent about the meeting between his son, son-in-law, his campaign manager, and a group of Russians in June 2016. Emails about those meetings make it clear it was about getting access to Hillary Clinton's emails. President Trump dictated the statement saying the meeting was unimportant and about adoption policy. Now, as the special counsel's investigation continues, the White House is increasingly worried the president's direct involvement in dictating that statement leaves him needlessly vulnerable to allegations of a cover-up. This is Priscilla Huff reporting from Washington.
And Donald Trump's communications director, Anthony Scaramucci, has been formally escorted off the White House grounds after being fired just 10 days into his new role. His sacking came just hours after the appointment of former General John Kelly as the new White House Chief of Staff. It's 6:05. To sport and discipline and better decision-making have been the focus for New Zealand women's side ahead of their departure for the Rugby World Cup in Ireland. The Black Ferns had their final training session in Auckland today and will fly out tonight for the competition, which starts in Ireland next week. The coach Glenn Moore says they've been concentrating on reducing the errors that dogged their last clash with the tournament's favourite, England, in June.
We gave away a lot of penalties, yellow cards, so we had Chris Pollock from the referees in, did a presentation to us about some of his findings, looking through some of the footage, and then we trained some of those things out on the field. So done a lot of work behind the scenes to try and fine-tune what we've been doing.
The Black Ferns' first match is against Wales. The champion swimmer Lauren Boyle says she's finally had to admit injuries are keeping her from performing at international level. The 5-time World Championship medalist, Commonwealth Games champion and former world record holder has announced her retirement from the pool, saying it was a tough decision but one she had to make. New Zealand golfers Ryan Fox and Danny Lee have both qualified for the fourth and final major of the year, the PGA Championship in North Carolina. And Los Angeles has been formally chosen to host the 2028 Summer Olympics in a deal that virtually assures the 2024 Summer Games will be held in Paris. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Dunkirk. There's a big motion picture about it on at the moment. The historian Jared Oram wants to put the record straight about the role the French played in holding off the Germans while the British got out, which will lead nicely into the fifth and final episode of the 2017 Wreath Lecture Series, in which the author Dame Hilary Mantel discusses the role history plays in our present. On Nights with me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Met service weather through to midnight tomorrow, Northland, Auckland and Coromandel. The odd shower today, rain with heavy falls spreading from the north tomorrow afternoon and evening, and with possible thunderstorms about eastern Northland. Waikato and Bay of Plenty, a few showers, turning to scattered rain tomorrow. Waitomo to Manawatu, including the central high country, periods of rain with some heavy falls, slowly clearing from tomorrow afternoon. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, a few spots of rain becoming widespread tonight. Horowhenua, Kapiti, Wellington and Wairarapa, Nelson, Marlborough, Canterbury, Otago and Southland. Cloudy periods, a few showers clearing inland Otago and Southland tonight. For Bulla, Westland and Fiordland, mainly fine, but the odd shower about Bulla. And for the Chatham Islands, rain this evening with showers tomorrow. It's 6:08 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Thank you so much. Do stay with us because we have a really fascinating, we think, discussion coming up on Will This Work? for Labor. It has been a day of firsts for them. Jacinda Ardern became its youngest ever leader. Kelvin Davis became its first Māori deputy leader. But Labor's new number 2 nearly walked away from politics altogether 6 years ago. The former teacher and school principal was knocked out of Parliament after suffering a third bruising loss in Te Tai Taukere. But in the last election, Kelvin Davis finally ousted his long-term rival, Mana leader, Hone Harawera. And he's now Labor's number 2. I asked him how it felt to be the first Māori politician in that position.
Yeah, it's 100 years in the making. I guess all good things take time, John. But look, it's a privilege to be in this position, and I'm really looking forward to supporting Jacinda Ardern, our new leader, in her role, and getting out there with her and making sure people see that we are a fresh team that's really prepared to take it to the government, and in 7 and a bit weeks become the new government.
What's most important to you? What is the thing that you most, obviously setting aside that you want to be government, what is the thing you want to achieve?
Yeah, look, you don't want to become government just for the sake of becoming government. But there are many things. Of course, there's Labor's bread and butter issues that we've been addressing for those 100 years around housing, education, health. And you know that I've got personal I really want to do well in reducing and eliminating sexual violence, all the stuff that goes on in prisons. I think that we throw way too many people in prisons who've actually got issues that need to be addressed that lead to their offending. So there's a lot of work to be done, but right now the biggest thing that I'm hearing across Taitokerau, in fact all of us are hearing across the country, is the whole homelessness and getting more houses built and getting people out of their cars and off the streets and that into warm, dry homes.
And it is a sad, sorry to interrupt, but it is a sad reality that the people who are most likely to suffer from poor housing, the people who are most likely to be represented in our very high imprisonment rate are Māori, right?
Yeah, that's right. And as a Māori politician, you feel the weight of responsibility to turn that around. And, that's why I got into politics, is to make things better for Māoridom. And, I guess being the deputy leader and supporting Jacinda, it just gives me more opportunity to influence and to, make sure that we do actually get in and do the hard work to make sure that people's lives are improved. And look, not just only for Māori. I mean, it's great that I'm Māori and I'm in this position, but Labor's here for all New Zealanders, and we've got to do it for the whole country.
Okay, let's pick up on that. How do you talk to the people who have given up on not just the Labour Party, although they might be seen often as your natural constituency, but who have given up on politics full stop, the 40% of 18 to 24-year-olds who didn't vote? As I said to Jacinda Ardern, more people didn't vote than voted for Labour last time round. How do you even persuade them to notice that things are changing, that you are offering them something meaningful and new?
Yeah, visibility and cut through. I mean, we've got to be meeting people on their doorsteps and in the streets and in the pubs and RSAs. And we've just got to double and redouble our efforts to be there, meeting and greeting people and let them know that we care. That's the biggest thing. We as politicians often get criticised for all sorts of things, but the fact of the matter is I know Jacinda, myself, and the rest of our Labour caucus, we really care about
Andrew
people.
Little. Andrew Little cared though, didn't he? I mean, it's a care. Yeah. And he was a trade unionist. He gave a damn. I saw him after Pike River giving a damn. I mean, this is a man who is on the record as having given a damn, but it wasn't persuasive. What's different now?
Well, I think greater cut through. Jacinda is very, very popular. Her stakes are set to skyrocket. This has been a big thing for Māoridom to see a Māori deputy leader of the Labour Party. There's well wishes coming from all around the country. But there's nothing like actually face-to-face meeting, knocking on doors, talking to people in the streets, making sure that our messages are relevant to and that our policies actually are the policies that people need.
Kelvin Davis talking to me earlier. So, Will this translate for Labor? Will it make a difference to Labor? This is a fascinating discussion, and I'm delighted to welcome to the studio former Labor Party President Mike Williams, who predicted this morning exactly what was going to happen. Also with us in the studio is Dr. Ella Henry, who is a senior lecturer in Māori development at AUT and a former executive director of Greenpeace. Kia ora, haere mai, welcome. It's lovely to have you here, Mike. Lovely to have you here too. And sitting in between them, Robert Bree, who is the CEO of the Research Association of New Zealand. And Robert, I'm going to ask you a question, and you don't have to answer it, but who do you vote for?
I definitely vote on the right, John.
Okay, great, thank you. Right, excellent. Okay, let's be robust in our assessment of whether or not this is going to make a difference. Robert, from a polling viewpoint, from a research viewpoint, from an analysis of demographics viewpoint, will this make Labor more attractive to people who aren't even voting for anyone at the moment?
In my opinion, if the election was held today, John, Labor or the left would win. But there are 7 weeks to go. So it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next 7 weeks in terms of the polls. In a way, I think Jacinda's got it's her competition to lose at the moment.
Why do you think that? What's your research showing?
Look, ultimately, politics is a battle of brands, right? So we talk about ideas, we talk about policies, we talk about personalities, but it's really about people making choices about which of these brands is for me. Is the green brand for me, the red brand for me, or the blue brand for me? And I think at the moment what we're seeing is Jacinda this morning talked about she'd never been called a fresh coat of paint before, a fresh lick of paint, I think she said. But in a way, that's true. It's a bright new face. And I think in terms of what was the issue with the Labor brand, there were probably two issues. One is a failure to get their policies across in a meaningful way to the younger voter, not only the younger voter, but the younger voter in particular. But also it wasn't a very attractive brand. And I think that by putting Jacinda at the front of that brand, they've massively increased the likability of the brand overnight.
Ella Henry, I want to come to you in a sec, because I want to talk to you about the people who aren't voting, aren't participating, and we're going to hear from a group of them, and it's almost slightly upsetting to hear them talk. But Mike Williams, can I come to you? Because as Robert was talking then, I was thinking to myself, you know Andrew Little.
Yes, I do.
And we're talking about him as a brand that hasn't worked, as the face of a brand that wasn't working. He took stock. He acknowledged that and he stepped down. Was he pushed, or did he decide actually what was best for Labor was what he did?
It was entirely his decision, as I understand it. Those polls really took the wind out of his sail. He's been working his guts out. He's been all over the country. He's done a good job in terms of the party is united behind him, was united behind him. He's attracted some very good new candidates, and even in the Maori seats, he has got good, solid policy. The party is as well organised or better than when I was there. They've got a bit of money. There's a huge flow of money, I was told by the General Secretary at 4 o'clock, started arriving the minute Jacinda. So he's done a good job, but he just was not getting the word is cut through. And I used that this morning, and everyone's been talking about it.
Yes, they have. That's gone off like a baton in a relay, hasn't it? It's been passed around. And so he wasn't getting the cut through. Do you think Jacinda Ardern can get cut through? Like that phone that is ringing now, that's probably someone else trying to get an interview, Mike, about what's happened today. Do you think Jacinda Ardern can get cut through?
If she can't get it, no one can. She's physically attractive. She's very bright. She's a woman of great substance. And she has practically single-handedly put the issue of child poverty on the table. I think she can. What I can tell you is I live in a pretty female whānau, and they are absolutely fizzing with the idea. Yes, I think she can, but I think you've got to see this as a pair. And I think the real stroke of genius is adding Kelvin Davis into the mix.
And can we bring in Ella Henry here, Dr. Ella Henry? And I'm sorry to come to you last, but I want to come to some vox pops off the back of you. So you lead to them rather beautifully. More people didn't vote than voted for Labor. One of the groups that has the lowest turnouts is Māori. Another group that has a very low turnout, only I think 40% or something, is 18 to 24-year-olds. Is this going to make the blindest piece of difference to those constituencies?
I'd like to think that any kind of change in the political process at the moment will bring more, particularly of our rangatahi young Māori and Pacific Islanders into the fold. I'm optimistic in a small way that the work that was being done over the last year or so by Marae to feed the homeless, to bring the homeless into a community, may engage those people more in a sense of community. The reality is, though, we're not going to know what's in their minds because they don't have the infrastructure to participate in polls. You know, they don't have a phone, or if they do, they're not going to be like fizzing to watch radio, listen to Radio New Zealand on it. So we don't know what they're going to do. They are literally the great unknown. And I'd like to think that the media that's been generated in the last couple of weeks that's put New Zealand women to the forefront, like Bateria last week and Jacinda this week, is actually going to get to resonate with them.
And you have seen a commensurate rise in the Greens polling, right? Since Materia Ture actually got them some coverage.
Exactly, and I think the same thing may happen. I mean, let's be clear, middle New Zealand, whatever, it's colourblind. If you own a house, a couple of houses, you're quite happy with a business-friendly, low-tax, no capital gains government. And so that disenfranchised population, the working poor and the homeless, we have to figure out how to include them in our society, or we've failed as a society.
John, we did some research a few months back as a research association, and we found that less than 50% of young voters 18 to 29, felt that any one of the parties represented their beliefs and values. So
isn't that sad? Isn't that terribly sad?
Which to me, when you translate into what causes voter non-participation, not having a set of options that you feel is relevant to you is a big part of it.
Right, now we're going to give you an example of that, and it's precisely the point that you've just been speaking to. Laura Tupou went out to South Auckland today to talk to a constituency that Labour would like to be able to rely on. And she asked them very simple questions. What do you think of Andrew Little? What do you think of Jacinda Ardern? And the fact of the matter was, they didn't think of them at all.
Do you know who the Labour leader is at the moment?
No. No.
Do you know who the leader of the Labour Party is?
No, I don't actually, to be honest, no.
Do you know who the leader of the Labour Party is?
Oh, no, I don't, actually.
Do you know who the leader of the Labour Party is?
Not as this morning, unless it's changed already.
Do you know who the Labour leader is?
I forgot his name, but I support him 100%. Yeah.
Andrew Little?
Andrew Little, oh yeah, that's his name. Yeah. He's a good guy, yeah.
So this morning he quit, but what's your reaction to that?
Well, we needed him for to win the election, but I'm a bit gutted now, so yeah.
Do you know who the leader of the Labour Party is?
Is it Bill English? Am I right?
Have you heard of Andrew Little before?
Oh, I think so. I have, maybe, years ago. I think. Have you heard of Andrew Little? I don't know.
What about Jacinda Ardern?
No.
Do you know any Labour MPs?
Oh, was Helen Clark one? Oh, yeah, there you go. Helen Clark.
So the new leader is Jacinda Ardern.
Oh, okay, cool.
What do you think about that?
I think that's a good idea. She's young, vibrant, she'll have a lot of ideas, so yeah.
Do you know who Calvin Davis is?
Yes, I do.
He's the new deputy.
Is he? Wow, that is pretty good. Yeah.
The way he's looking is going down, and I think, better quit, give it to someone else. Yeah, but now it's happened, so it's good.
You think it's a good idea that he's quit?
Yeah, but it's only the trouble because she's in a short time for the election,
8 weeks?
Yeah, I know. I know it's 8 weeks, but yeah.
Do you think they have a chance?
It's not too bad. I think so. It's going to be a chance for it too, so see what happens.
What could a party do to ensure that you went out this September and ticked some boxes?
They could probably, build their module on more American style of politics, which is a lot more, showmanship, razzmatazz. Probably get us a bit more interested in our politics, because our politicians, no offence, are all quite
ugly and boring, so it's hard for millennials when all we care about is Rihanna and Drake.
What about Jacinda Ardern, though?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, she's no Helen Clark, right? In my eyes. Who's a boss-ass bitch.
Dr. Ella Henry, I found that fascinating, and I've done a lot of interviewing of people in that shopping mall, and I find them to be engaged, articulate, opinionated, and yet when they were asked about Labour Party politics, they just didn't. What? No care? What's the failure there? What's gone wrong?
This is speaking loud and long to all of the Labour community and activists and politicians, is that they have to go out there and address those. They have to get to know those people. And I know it's hard when you're in opposition and you don't have the resources of the party, the party in power. But clearly, there's not enough getting out and talking to the people. Because this is what I know about Māori people. I'd love it if we voted for brands, but unfortunately, we vote with our hearts. We're tragic.
That's true.
We actually vote with our hearts, and once we engage with you, and there's kanohi ki te kanohi, there's eye contact, then you can take our hearts. So there's some work to be done in that community.
And Mike Williams, does the Labour Party know that?
They do know that. I did a hell of a lot of work on the non-vote in between 2002 and 2005.
So that was the last election Labour won, 2005,
That's right.
And was getting the non-vote out was material?
Well, you saw it happen on election night. Remember all those South Auckland seats came in with very high party votes?
That's right. They came in late at night and it was just a big whoosh for Labour.
Now, that can be done again. Now, there's a couple of things were happening there. This is the election where Don Brash was going to restore market values to state rentals. So a lot of these people were threatened with a rent rise. So that's why they got out and voted Labour. But as Ella said, there is absolutely no substitute for going face to face. And what the Labour candidates and activists have got to do is walk around in those food halls and actually eyeball these people, because that's what sticks in your mind. And I've done that endlessly with Helen Clark.
And I know Louise has done an extraordinary job around where she lives in Manurewa, but it's literally the whole party really has to get behind those places where the silent voters are.
But what I would say is that a lot of these people simply don't realise that politics is relevant to them, that their low wages are because of government policies.
But isn't that a failure of politics, to persuade them that it's relevant? Rob Bree, you were a researcher. Isn't that actually a failure of effort by our politicians if they haven't managed to persuade those people that politics matters, what have they done?
You're absolutely right. Look, politics is largely played out in the mainstream media. The people we just saw in those interviews, they're not engaged with the news. They're not engaged with the newspapers. They're not listening to this show. And the people who are tend to vote for the right. So the Labour Party, if they're going to win the next election, they have to engage at the street level. But one of the things I just thought we should add in, John, is voter participation in New Zealand is actually relatively high. We're in the top 10. 73% of New Zealanders actually do participate in the elections. The highest in the world is Belgium at 87%. So we're not that far behind, but unfortunately there's a very large chunk of voters who probably would vote on the left if they voted, and Labour's not getting them.
Yeah, this is a fascinating conversation. I'm so delighted to have the three of you here. Thank you. We have 3 minutes to go. Ella Henry, Dr. Ella Henry, what does the Labour Party have to do? And what was Andrew Little suggesting they do by departing?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's an honourable person who could see the writing on the wall. It may have been strategically not the best thing to do precisely at this time, but I do think that will resonate with old Labour supporters. My view is that the Labour Party has to get itself together and come up with what I would call a counter-hegemony. Reconstruct a narrative where they are relevant, because for 9 years, New Zealanders have struggled to see where they fit in the landscape and have drifted off to other places.
OK, Rob Bree, what do the Nats have to do then if that narrative is going to be constructed? What do the Nats have to do to say, no, our narrative's best?
Yeah, look, I think maybe if we talk about Labour first, Labour need to simplify their messages. At the moment, their messages aren't getting cut through. And they probably need to get down to 3 very core messages around housing, employment, and they need to be able to have that economic debate that the National Party is so good at having. What do National need to do? At the moment, they'll be just regrouping and looking at, what are Labour's strengths and Labour's weaknesses. I guess they've got to continue to argue the relevance for the economic model that they're pushing, which, as Ella touched on, is relevant for maybe 80% of us, but there's a big 20% who are missing out. And National are going to have to figure out how they're going to manage that, particularly in Auckland, particularly around homelessness and poverty, and particularly around housing.
Mike Williams, you have had a long association with Labor. You know what works and what doesn't. Will this work for them?
You can quote me on this. National's in trouble. What people haven't overlooked is a slow erosion of the National vote. And what you saw with those three bad polls that were very bad for Labor was really a reorganisation of the opposition vote. Now, if Jacinda and Kelvin can get some of that non-vote and reach out to some of those National voters who are worried about homelessness, child poverty, that kind of thing, National is in trouble. Trust me.
Absolutely fascinating conversation. I can't thank you enough. Mike Williams, Rob Bree and Dr. Ella Henry, thank you for coming in.
Thanks, John.
Public radio works because people like you give us your time and expertise, and we are super grateful for it. We're also really grateful to our audience, which is watching and listening in big numbers. I want to say, Rob, on behalf of my colleagues at RNZ, thank you all for being with us tonight on Checkpoint. That is the program. On behalf of our excellent team, we really appreciate your company. We'll be back tomorrow at 5.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. Labour's new leader, Jacinda Ardern, says focusing on the 90,000 young people who didn't vote in the last election is key to changing electoral outcomes. The Green Party's co-leader, James Shaw, says Jacinda Ardern has all the qualities needed to change Labour's fortune and become the next Prime Minister. The leader of the Opportunities Party, Gareth Morgan, has decided against running in the Epsom seat held by the ACT leader David Seymour. Uninsured property owners in Christchurch's red zone hope a landmark court ruling will mean they'll finally be paid out on their quake-damaged homes. There's been a 10th death in Auckland related to synthetic drug use. And the Washington Post is reporting the US president personally dictated a misleading statement issued in the name of his eldest son, Donald Trump Jr., about his meeting with a Russian lawyer. Our next news and weather is